Hi guys, today I'm going to be starting these plague models. As you can see, I've drawn three different designs. I took a picture of them and then I put them in Photoshop and just gave them a bit of contrast to bring out the black detail there, and then I shrunk them down to about the right size for the armatures. And in this right hand corner you can see a sort of bends that you need to put into the armature when you're making it. So I'm going to start on the first one, which is going to be this one. We'll see how we get on. Let's prop that up a little bit. You guys can't really see that in shot, but I'm going to be using it as reference for when I'm doing the wire, especially the smaller ones, to get the right to get the bends right. Right, I'm just going to start with just bending this wire. There's loads of different types of wire that you can buy. I think this one is a galvanized steel, but also you can get aluminium, copper. I tend to find those are a little bit too soft for me. And when you're bending, manipulating the wire, tend to break a lot easier. So right now I'm just making the body piece of the armature, and I will just measure that, make sure we're going for 32mm scale with these ones, so you have to allow for the hip as well, because you're going to put a bend in there where the hip is. Right, so I'll just mark that off a little bit. Right, so I'm going to put the bend in the hip. Let's just have a look here. You see, just put it where the head is. I'll just sort of take a mental note of where you need to put the legs in. About there. So I'm just bending it out. Putting the hip in the wire. Right, now I'm just going to put a bit of an arch in the back. You can see his legs are quite wide apart, so his hips might be a little bit too big by the looks of it, so I'm going to do is just move those in a little bit. Quite difficult to keep the actual armature in the camera. Sorry about that. So it's starting to take shape. Right. I'm just checking against that. His hips seem to be a little bit too big, so I'm going to bend that just a little bit more. I'm actually pushing the pinching the wire a little bit so it's overlapping to bring the hips in a little bit more. Right, so I just try and get that in view for you. Right, so he's sort of got his legs apart, so I'm going to put in the first knee joint. Put in the next one. Sort of bending one way and then the other way just to give him some knees. I mean, we're working to a 35mm scale, but these guys will be slightly larger, as a human size figure would be 32mm from feet to the eye line. So these guys might be about 34. So as you can see that in the profile. So now I've just got to get his feet. So I like to put his, actually make a little bit of wire for the foot. I'll bend it one way and then the other, creating a foot. And same for the other side as well. Sometimes quite tricky to get them looking balanced so they're the right size on each leg. So we'll just measure that, because I mean it's going to be, he's looking quite large now. I mean, look at that, he's kind of 40mm now. Which is too big. So we'll have another go at doing another one. But you get an idea of how it's sort of done. But we can save him for another project anyway. Just came out slightly too big. So we'll have another go. Yes, right. Okay, to start with, Just bend the wire in the middle or thereabouts. Closing it together to begin with. Right. Now this here you can see where the armatures. This is kind of like a generic sort of armature. Sort of give you a guide where the bends sort of are. What I've done here is I've sketched out some plague models. Then I've shrunk them down on the computer. And that's roughly around about the right size. So that's sort of a guide to keep the miniatures to that sort of scale. And the larger print is so that you can see the detail and use that as a guide to sort of what you're going to sculpt. Anyway, carry on with the armature. So we're going for 32mm scale with these. They will be slightly larger because with a 32mm scale that would be a human size figure from foot to eye line. So if I sort of measure this out, it does help to have a pen. You can just mark off where you need to actually put the various bends in the wire. I'm just going to grip it with the pliers against where the hips need to be. Just put a slight bend in there, and then create the hip. So I'm just bending the wire out on either side. Remember, there's no rush, you know. I mean, I'm kind of limited by battery in this camera, but there's no actual rush, and you can, you know, you can do this multiple times until you're happy with the armature. It's quite important to get the armature right in the beginning. Right, so I'm now just going to put the actual bend to create the hip. And also, I mean, it is quite tricky to get both sides balanced accurately. I mean, that just comes with practice. Where you place the pliers. Right, so just having a look again. So a quick check. He's looking not too bad. So I'm now just going to bend that out slightly because his legs are slightly apart. Just try and match the picture best I can. And then put in the knee joints in the armature, so there's kind of one there, sort of bending it slightly forward for the leg, and then do the other side. This is actually my first video, so I apologise if it's not always in shot. It's not as easy as it looks. I'm trying to keep it in shot in the camera. Right, so now I'm just sort of gripping the wire and just creating the shape of the hip a little bit more. Now the the actual bottom half of the leg, the calf muscles I believe it's called. Right, so I'm now going to put I like to put in a foot as well, and that sort of helps create the pose as well, so that you know what way the leg is facing, or the foot, which way the foot is actually pointing. A lot of miniatures have quite wide legs on the pose. Just creates a more dynamic looking figure rather than sort of straight legs. So especially with that design there, his legs are quite far apart, so okay, that's looking pretty good. Pretty happy with that so far. Sorry, just trying to get the angle right for you so you can see. So I'm just going to refine that a little bit more. Now you can see on the armature, the generic armature picture there, and this just gives you a sort of a guide, and there are some kinks, some bends there, as you can see, round the hip and round here. I mean, depending on what you're going to do with the figure, I mean, that's just sort of a guide for a human figure, but if you were creating a monster or something, you might want to do a different shape on him. So I'm just going to put a kink in there for his stomach. You may find when you're manipulating the wire that it loses its shape in some places. It's a case of just going back and rebending it. I think this wire that I'm using right now is quite a strong wire. It's not soft like an aluminium or copper. It's got a little bit more strength to it. I find it better because you can bend it more and it won't break. Also, something to point out is when I'm making my armatures, I like to just do the feet, and just do the body and the feet first, and then I sort of do the initial sculpt, and then I'll add the arms afterwards. I mean, that's just my preferred method, but you'll find that some people just like to make the whole armature and then skin it with the arms on. But I've had a few difficulties getting the proportions right with the arms, so I like to do the body first, and then I'll add some green stuff, bulk it out a little bit, and then I'll add the arms, and I find my proportions are better that way. So yeah, I'm quite happy with the way that is. It's got a slight sort of bend on this leg here, so he's kind of stepping up and forward with this leg, because you can see he's sort of got his arm raised here. Something to point out is that when it comes to doing the arm, I will actually put an armature for his guts there. I'll put some wire there, also down here as well, and here. Yeah, and also the same goes for this arm here. The wire, I'll make a wire armature for this part and this part here. But yes, we'll bulk out the body next. I'm going to do the 2 armatures for these guys, and just refine this a little bit more. Yeah, his neck needs a little bit more of refinement. Just takes time to get it how you would like it. As you can see, he's sort of got his head raised. Anyway, I'll come back to you when I've done the other 2 armatures.